Hello, Charlotte.
Hello, Nina. What we've got coming up in the next few months, we've got some really exciting guests. We can't wait to tell you all about that for the next couple of podcasts.
Brilliant guests.
And we have got, for this episode, we're just going to have a little talk about what we're currently doing, move into the fitting room, and a recommendation for some exhibitions.
Yes, brilliant. Basically a quickie.
A short
one. Spring hasn't quite sprung into our step yet, has it, Charlotte? North Norfolk slightly behind on the spring front. So, what's first?
Well, the first thing we've got is our new jingle.
Well, yes. Some might say it's just a bit of a noise, but we quite like it, don't we?
Well, it's part of our everyday lives.
It is everyday.
And that's why we wanted to share it.
Yes.
A normal noise of the workshop.
Yes. Exactly that.
And the normal noise. So anyway, we've got our new jingle, which we've, here it is. Any comments? Let us know. So we're also going to talk about what work we've been doing. So I know you've been very busy, Nina. What have you been working on?
Well, at present I'm doing a commission for Canterbury Cathedral, which is placing some beautiful late Gothic angels.
And how long have you been working on these angels?
Quite some time now.
How many weeks, days, months?
Oh my goodness, that's put me on the spot. Probably each angel took about 5 days to model. There's 4 of those, so 20 days modelling life size, full size, and I guess there was another 20 days prior to that modelling something else, plus lots of other, it's probably about 6 months.
I carved an angel in a day.
Yes, you did. And if you go on the YouTube channel, you'll see that angel. You knocked one out.
Knocked one out.
Beautiful. It's very beautiful. So that's what I've been doing, bringing it up and down the country in meetings and talking to very knowledgeable archaeologists and archivists and historians and conservators, which is my daily routine, really.
But weirdly, very little carving amongst
I'd say a third of the project, most projects, a third of it is research, very, very important research, and modelling and talking to people and making sure you're doing exactly what they need and delivering what they require while still trying to keep a hold of your own identity as a maker.
It's a fine balance sometimes.
It really is. It really is. You have to stick to what you know and trust that they are employing you because they like what you do, and you have to hold on to that, I think, while you're in these discussions.
It's quite difficult sometimes, isn't it?
It really can be.
Yeah.
It can be. But when you get it right and everybody's happy, maybe there's a little bit of compromise on both sides, it's joyful. So it's worth the fight, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing when they're finished. We'll go down and do a site visit and maybe a little video,
little filming.
About it.
Yeah, there's
lots fun to do.
That would be good. So how about you, Charlotte? What have you been up to?
I have got a new apprentice, which is very exciting.
That's very
Part-time.
exciting. And who's funding that apprentice? Are you funding it? Or?
No, it's through the Lettering Arts Trust. It's a young woman called Maya Gaffney Hyde, and she started with me in the new year, part-time in my workshop, and I'm really enjoying teaching, and I'm really enjoying seeing her progress so far. So we'll post some images of her work. You can follow her on Instagram. I'm Maya Gaffney Hyde, and I've also just finished a couple of headstones. I do a lot of headstones, fix them in the graveyard. So we've had a couple of cold and damp days with our fixer, Buckets,
The amazing buckets. What would we do with that bucket?
Well, we'd struggle.
We would really struggle with that bucket.
You need somebody on site who's really practical, confident, unafraid of making decisions and working things out when things don't always go.
But also sensitive to the fact that he's handling your work.
Yeah.
He's helping you. You work together. It's not like you're handing it over to him. I know you work as a team, don't you? You're a very strong team.
Exactly. We're a strong team, and he's very sensitive because sometimes clients are on site when we fix the stones.
And also handling a hard material that you have to be sensitive, which people don't always understand, do they?
We always are surprised when we fix the stone. I think we make it look like quite a slick operation now, because we've been working together for probably 10 years or more, and every little bit of our process is finely refined over years of experience. And so it looks easy, but actually if somebody else had to do it and they hadn't had our years of practice and experience in moving and handling material, I think they'd be surprised at how difficult it is, because we're so familiar with the process of moving a big piece of stone and how to handle it, and how to get it onto the grave and to roll it into the hole that we've dug. It actually looks relatively easy, and it's easy to forget how many years of experience we've built up to get to that point.
There's so many possible points of that kind of situation where you or he or someone could get hurt.
Yeah.
And also, you're not talking about ground that's even. You're not talking about easy access.
No, access is...
And you're very public. You're in the public eye, aren't
and
you?
in
So you have
fact,
to be safe at every single point.
We did 2 fixings one day after another, and both churchyards had difficult gates or very tight access points. And, there was one gate that we just couldn't open. Well, I would never have been able to open it, but Buckets has got a background in engineering and mechanics, and he just lifted the whole gates off the fixing, which I would never have thought to do or had the strength to do because of his engineering and mechanical background. He just took one look at it and lifted them off, and we were in.
And then he put it back quite safely afterwards.
Yeah, but it probably saved us a good 40 minutes to an hour of hauling a lot of material the long way around. So, and the other interesting thing that I'd sort of forgotten about fixing in a churchyard is the microbiome content of the soil is completely different to your garden. And so with my new apprentice, I had been reminded that she would need to go and get her tetanus up to date, because
I hadn't thought about that until you told me.
Digging around in the soil, and there's loads of, over the years, lots of rotting bodies. And so it has a completely different...
It's crazy, isn't it? People taking a picnic to a cemetery.
We take a picnic, but...
Yeah.
I was once ill after having a picnic in the cemetery, and when I started looking it up, I realised it was because of the different makeup of the soil. So now we always have to have hand sanitizer and wipes and make sure we wash our hands.
People just wouldn't think about it.
Well, it took, I never thought about it.
It took you getting ill.
It took me getting ill, but now.
And did you talk to a doctor about that then?
No, I just looked it up online.
Did you? And that was the most obvious reason.
Yes.
Extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. So it's even things like that, think as a stone carver, you're in your workshop all the time, but we're often on site doing funny things. So what have we got next?
So last week I was fortunate enough to go to the V&A. I've got another quite big project on the go. And as part of that project, I am 3D scanning 4 very beautiful objects at the V&A Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And while I was there, I was very aware that there's the most exquisite Donatello exhibition there. And I would strongly advise anybody who is in the London area, or if you fancy a day out in London, go and see the Donatello. It's very beautiful. It's not just his work, it's work from his contemporaries and work that inspired him as well. Some of the works have not been seen at the V&A before. Obviously, Italy doesn't let go of its Donatellos. It keeps it quite obviously into its own country, but I've been reliably told by the curator that there are at least 50 new works brought into that exhibition. And for those people interested in very low 1-point perspective relief,
that's me.
That's you. There are some very exquisite examples of that shows low relief done to its absolute, in Italy they would call it true relief or real relief, and that's treating the surface in such a way that if it's lit in the right way, the low relief looks 3-dimensional. So it's not something stuck on a background or kind of cut and applied to a background. It actually looks like you're looking into the telly. I always think it's like an action scene from something.
I can't wait to go and see it.
It's really, really worth going. But I would strongly suggest, and I am really lucky, I work with some incredible people, and I spoke to a colleague of mine and he said, he'd given 2 guided tours of the exhibition, people who had no real knowledge of Donatello through the Imperial College London's adult education and part-time courses. And he told me some brilliant information about Donatello that makes the exhibition come to life. And I was thinking, well, I can't get him on here to talk us through all the new ins and outs. But what I would suggest to anybody who's interested in going to the exhibition is that you go to your podcast platform and you look up The Sculptor's Funeral. Anybody interested in figurative art at all, figurative sculpture, look up The Sculptor's Funeral. And it's a podcast run or done by a guy called Jason Arkles. And I think he was the principal at the Florence Academy, but he lives in Florence and is a figurative sculptor living in Florence with a huge interest in figurative work. And it's a massive archive of work from him. And he does a wonderful episode just on Donatello. I listened to it again the other day after I saw the exhibition, and it really did underline a lot of the information that my colleague had given me. So if you're off to London and you're going to see the Donatello on the train or before you go, listen to the Sculptor's Funeral podcast, Jason Arkles, and listen to the Donatello one, and I will guarantee you'll enjoy the exhibition to a different level, because he was arguably the greatest sculptor that ever lived. Some people would argue that Michelangelo was, but I would argue without Donatello, there would have been no Michelangelo. There we are on that one.
Do you like a good argument?
Do you? Well, maybe you and I should set one up. And then,
only if I win, though.
Only if you know you're going to win too. Then we come to the fitting room. And this week I would like to...
You've got a tip?
I've got a tip for the
Top
fitting.
tip.
I've got a top tip for the fitting room. And I have a visual learning difference. I cannot see symmetry, which is very difficult if you're a sculptor, so I have to overcome that. And that's one of the reasons I don't do very much lettering, and I do struggle with two-dimensional designing. I have to do lots of different tips and tricks to help me through that.
What I find fascinating about discovering how we work, because in some ways we're so similar and in other ways we're so different, because I'm really drawn to symmetry. I think that I see symmetry very clearly.
You apparently do it very naturally.
I feel it's very natural, but I really struggle with 3D form. And it's exactly how we work. Yeah. I work much more low.
3D form is instinctual.
And you do 3D form as a natural,
definitely.
Thinking thing.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that there's this massive overlap in our skill set, and then there's this massive ocean apart.
Yeah.
To do with how our minds are set up in a way, and we work to our strength. But I love the interaction that we have that allows us to give us an insight and understanding into each other's mindset and workflow, because it's a learning experience. And that's what I really enjoy, is when I'm learning.
I think it's really nice somebody pointing out that you do something instinctually, because it makes you think about why you do it. And also it's really nice for somebody who finds what you struggle with. If they find it really easy or natural, then I think it's really lovely, because you learn their tips and tricks, if you like, or their kind of ways of coping with struggle.
So what's your way of coping?
So it took me years, and for years and years and years, it would slow me up. It was like working with treacle when I had to mirror something over. So for instance, if I'm doing a portrait and I've got two, obviously most people have two ears, some people don't. I would struggle taking information from one ear to the other. Even if I made the ears on a portrait separately on a table and applied them, which some people do, I would still struggle mirroring that information. And also the shape of eyes or the bulk of nostrils. The face is a two-part form. And if I was drawing, with lettering, of course, or designing in two-dimensional, taking a curve into one direction and another. So for years and years and years, what I did was kept it very quiet and didn't tell anybody I was struggling. I just struggled. And then I don't know who told me to do this. I really can't pinpoint anybody, one person to thank. I wish I could. But now I have in my workshop, people might think I'm a bit vain, because in my little office I have a stash of mirrors, and they're all different sizes. And what I can do is I can set up the mirror behind the work I'm working on. And of course, a mirror gives you a mirror image of the thing that you're working on. So you turn the finished thing to the mirror, and that gives you a reverse image of the object that you're carving, which I can then look at and transfer that information over. And I cannot recommend it enough for anybody who's struggling with it. It changed my confidence immediately as soon as I started doing it.
I always think mirrors have been useful for seeing what you've drawn from a different perspective anyway, because they show what we see and what we think we see are so different, that a mirror, that flip side of something when you've drawn it as well, shows you what you've actually drawn from a different perspective and helps your eye to tune in to what you're seeing and what you're drawing as well.
I know some tutors that I work with, they advise you when at the end of the day, if you're a student and you're learning, you're concentrating on something and when you go home, take a photograph of the object before you go home and look at the photograph of the object on the train, or maybe look at the photograph of the object at home, and you can see what needs to happen.
Yeah.
It's really odd, that kind of, and I think the mirror does that, doesn't it? And it's a bit like turning, if you're making something and you're not sure, turning it upside down.
Yeah.
To kind of abstract it so that you look at the forms in a slightly different way, and
It's the power of the brain.
Yeah, you have to disrupt what your brain is telling you should happen or should be. You can apparently, again, I've been told this by experts, that when you're making something, it's the first 3 or 4 seconds of you looking at it first thing in the morning is truth before your brain starts to tell you what it should look like. So that's why you should regularly cover up your work. Like at lunchtime, cover it up, go and have lunch, come back, uncover it, bang, there's the mistake. And I'm talking about sculpture, of course, I'm not so sure about lettering, but it really works. Like, don't have something in your, say you're working on a sculpture and you're working on it in your part-time, you're doing it to learn, etc., etc. Don't have it out and look at it all the time, because it becomes wallpaper. You become so used to looking at it, you convince yourself everything's great. You need to cover it up, you need to put it away, don't have it, and unveil it to your brain so it's new every now and again. It really works.
The opposite with lettering.
You have to have it around.
No, I'm so focused in on the detail that I'm hyper aware of everything I'm not completely happy with, and all I can see are the things I'm dissatisfied with, and I have to cover it up and then look at it after a period of time to see that it's okay, because I think there's a thing about letters that's particularly detail driven, and we hone in and we might make like a fraction of a movement in the line that we're not happy with, but we can't change it for whatever reason. And it's like, for me, it's a big red flashing light going da 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 da, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Mistake.
And then if I don't look at it for a couple of days and I know I've made this huge thing that's leaping out at me, and then I can't even find it. So for me, it's the exact opposite. I need time away to see it for what it is. It's the same thing. It's seeing it for what it is, not for what you think it is.
Pretty much what I'm saying.
Yeah. Anyway, so before we go, what we'd like to ask everybody to do is, if you are enjoying our podcast, The Stone Carving and Lettering Takeaway, hit subscribe.
Absolutely.
And keep listening to us. And then
go to the YouTube channel.
Our YouTube channel is Abraxas Academy, which is ABRAXAS Academy. I think I spelled that right, didn't I?
ABRAXAS.
Abraxas Academy, and we've got some videos. We'll keep uploading information and things about ourselves and our workshops and our work. And then if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's info@abraxasacademy.co.uk. So keep listening. Thank you very much, and
thank you for listening.
Happy chipping.
Happy chipping. Bugger.